Our scripture text for today is from John chapter 1, verses 29 to 34. I'll be reading from the New Living Translation. Hear the word of the Lord. That night there were shepherds staying in the fields nearby, guarding their flocks of sheep. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord appeared among them, and the radiance of the Lord's glory surrounded them. They were terrified, but the angel reassured them. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I bring you good news that will bring great joy to all people. The Savior, yes, the Messiah, the Lord, has been born today in Bethlehem, the city of David. And you will recognize him by this sign. You will find a baby wrapped snugly in strips of cloth, lying in a manger." Suddenly, the angel was joined by a vast host of others, the armies of heaven, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and peace on earth to those with whom God is pleased." At that time, there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon. He was a righteous and devout, and was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come and rescue Israel. The Holy Spirit was upon him and had revealed to him that he would not die until he had seen the Lord's Messiah. That day, the Spirit led him to the temple. So when Mary and Joseph came to present the baby Jesus to the Lord, as the law required, Simeon was there. He took the child in his arms and praised God, saying, "Sovereign Lord, now let your servant die in peace, as you have promised. I have seen your salvation, which you have prepared for all people. He is a light to reveal God to the nations, and he is the glory of your people, Israel." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
This is the final Sunday in Advent, when churches predictably preach about peace. We open services by lighting the peace candle, singing songs about peace, and reading the passage from Isaiah that promises the Prince of Peace. And now it's my turn. So as we meditate on that serene manger scene, I'm supposed to preach a soothing sermon about how, just like on that silent night so long ago, we enjoy perfect peace today because Jesus was born in Bethlehem. I could do that, but you wouldn't believe me. I wouldn't believe me. Because the second you go on with your day, the headlines or your social media feed or a passive-aggressive lawn sign you pass later today will remind you that our world is at war. We just heard the angel's promise that Christmas would bring peace on earth. Yeah? Where? Not in Ukraine, where fighting rages on. Not in Sudan, which is being ravaged by genocide. Not in Gaza, where millions of Palestinians are caught in the crossfire between Israel and Hamas. Not for Jews anywhere, as Bondi Beach demonstrated. Not in Congo, where the world ignores a war that's killed more than 5 million people so far. Not in our cities, where ice raids and riots ratchet up the tension. Not in our schools, which regularly practice active shooter drills. Last week's tragedy at Brown is a chilling reminder why. Not in our politics, where celebrating the deaths of those who disagree with us has become normalized. Not in our homes, where domestic violence and divorce destroy too many families. And not in our hearts, which seem to be in a perpetual state of low-grade anxiety, always worrying about the next bill, the next deadline, the next headline, the next round of layoffs, the next conflict with somebody close to us, or the next discovery of some new problem we hadn't even realized we should be worrying about. And despite all the talk of peace in this season, Christmas only makes it worse. With all the final exams and travel expenses and gifts I'm not sure I can afford. Peace on earth? I don't think so. Today, many of us are stressed out by the pace and problems of the world. You know, it wasn't always like this. And some of you remember this because, like me, you grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when this promise of peace seemed more believable. During those decades, the Cold War ended, Urban crime plummeted, as did global poverty, while the Dow Jones grew by 1,000%. Global trade ensured peace by creating mutual dependencies between former enemies, and international treaties pursued nuclear disarmament. In those days, the Christmas promise of peace on earth seemed so close. So much so that Francis Fukuyama, who was both a political scientist from Harvard and a Protestant pastor, wrote the bestseller, The End of History, which declared that liberal democracy had triumphed decisively over every other ideology, so war would soon be eradicated forever. At that time, it seemed believable. Peace on earth was possible. But even then, it was only peace externally. It didn't change our hearts. The ancient Roman philosopher Epictetus conceded that while the emperor may give peace from war on land and sea, he's unable to give peace from passion and grief and envy. He cannot give us peace of heart. But even the external peace didn't last. After dominating scholarship for almost a decade, Fukuyama's theory that we'd finally conquered war came crashing down with the towers on 9/11. So it would be easy to conclude, as many do, that the peace the angels promised is little more than a quaint Christmas myth that only exists in snow globes and Christmas movies. Because in the real world, there'll never be peace on earth until Jesus comes back to save us from all the messes we keep making. But I think this misconstrues what the angels were promising and makes many of us miss out on the very real peace on earth that's available now, even while the world is still at war. According to the NIH, 20% of American adults and a whopping 32% of adolescents currently have a diagnosable anxiety disorder. In the past 20 years, deaths of despair have nearly doubled. And given the way the world is today, it's no wonder why. We're constantly being bombarded with bad news. We often start to scroll in search of comfort or distraction from our nagging sadness, but usually end up feeling even worse. In his book, The Anxious Generation, social psychologist Jonathan Haidt demonstrated how the epidemics of depression and anxiety almost immediately followed the adoption of smartphones, constantly buzzing in our pockets to remind us of who else is having fun that we're missing out on, who else is succeeding more than we are, and who else is suffering in ways that we're supposed to care about but don't know what to do about other than repost it to pass off our vague sense of anxiety and responsibility to whoever reads it next when their smartphone starts buzzing. How can we feel peace in a world that's so broken? We need to fix it first. We need to elect better politicians and end all the wars. We need to eradicate poverty and racism and rush hour and crime and climate change, the college admissions process, family conflict, bosses, bills, navigating so many different kinds of USB cables, and having to talk to a computer whenever I call customer service. I never guessed how much I'd miss chatting with somebody in Bangalore. Fixing all of the problems in the world would do it, but it's more than we can do. Our anxiety only increases, so we pray for Jesus to fix everything so that we can finally experience real peace. If only we could escape from all this brokenness in the world to one where all is calm and all is bright. Like on that silent night we sing about. Maybe we could have peace on earth. But that's not the world we actually live in, which is why we're so anxious and depressed. If that's how you feel, if you think that no amount of Christmas cookies or carols could give you any meaningful peace when there are still so many problems, then you're ready to read the real story about Christmas. Because it's not some sweet fantasy about a magical winter wonderland. It's a gritty story of a world mired in evil, oppression, darkness, and death. A world very much like ours. And it's the story of the very real peace that's possible, even in darkness. So let's look back with new eyes at that old story, starting with Mary and Joseph making their way down to Bethlehem. They're so often pictured as a cute young couple sauntering through the countryside with their amiable donkey. But they're called jackasses because there's no such thing as an amiable donkey. And this isn't an exciting weekend getaway before the baby arrives. Hey, let's baby moon in Bethlehem. No, the original readers would have recognized this as Roman repression. Joseph and Mary were a peasant couple trying to eke out a living under a foreign occupation when at the worst possible time they were forced to make their way down to Bethlehem to be counted so that Rome could ensure that it was taxing everybody adequately. But she was pregnant, which was its own story. I mean, people probably whispered and gossiped wherever they went due to suspicions about how that came about. And if you've ever known anybody who's 9 months pregnant, imagine taking her on a 3-day trip through a mountainous desert on the back of a bouncing donkey with no lumbar support. I mean, car sick doesn't begin to touch it. Childbirth is scary for anyone. But when Mary and Joseph finally arrived, there was no place left to stay. So they had to take shelter among the livestock. And then at the worst possible moment, she went into labor, alone with Joseph, who probably had no idea what to do. And when it was over, as she recovered, probably still covered in blood and placenta, in order to protect their fragile infant from all the manure and hooves, they had to lay him in a feeding trough with half-eaten hay. And that's the moment the angel startled those third-shift shepherds who were shunned by polite society by joyfully declaring, "Peace on earth!" But does that sound like peace? Is a terrified, dirty, impoverished, and exhausted couple worrying about how they're going to keep this baby alive what you picture when we sing "Silent Night"? All is calm, all is bright. Sleep in heavenly peace. It's not a peaceful scene. The real Christmas story captures all of the chaos and pain of the world. The real Christmas story starts in darkness. And it doesn't get better right after that either. Ruthless King Herod felt threatened that a new king of the Jews had been born, so in his paranoia, he ordered that all the baby boys in Bethlehem be massacred. Mary and Joseph had to take Jesus and flee in the middle of the night as refugees to Egypt. And they didn't speak Egyptian, so those must have been very difficult years. That doesn't sound like a Christmas fairy tale anymore, does it? It's a story of darkness, oppression, and desperation that resembles many parts of the world today. Which is why Simeon, whom we read about earlier, was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come and rescue Israel. I mean, obviously something was wrong with the world. And instead of just accepting it or avoiding the truth with religious platitudes, Simeon was maintaining a holy protest, impatiently waiting for God to keep his promise to bring peace to a world full of pain. And Simeon himself was probably in some pain. By the time we meet him in Luke 2, he's already old. And those weren't easy times to be old. I mean, this is before the days of hip replacements, corrective lenses, dental care, Prozac or Advil. So those who survived to old age probably had their share of aches and pains. And those were difficult days to be in Jerusalem, with the Roman army controlling every part of their lives. New taxes, new checkpoints, new indignities from arrogant soldiers who demeaned their religion and treated them as slaves. Meanwhile, after promising peace through prophets like Isaiah and Malachi, after promising to come to them and care for them, instead, God ghosted them for 400 years. People asked angrily, where is God in all this? Does he care? Does he see? Does he even exist? Or maybe more scary, has God realized that we're not worthy of love? I mean, we give up on each other all the time. Has God finally given up on us? These are the same questions that we ask whenever we encounter injustice or suffering today? These questions slowly steal our peace. We feel afraid, alone, hopeless. These questions, asked only in whispers, are fuel for our accelerating anxiety and despair. But the reason we make such a big deal about Christmas is that it's God's unexpected answer to all those questions. Because instead of holding us at a distance until we finally clean up the mess we made of the world he gave us, Christmas is the story of God joining us right in the middle of our messes. God didn't fix everything first to make it more comfortable for him. No, he dove right into the deep end of our darkness. Who's that baby born to the impoverished, persecuted young couple huddling in a stable? They will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us in the darkness. Jesus revealed what makes Christmas so special. It's not the carols or the cookies. It's the shocking surprise that even after we gave him so many reasons not to, still, God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Even the angels were astonished that the creator of everything was willing to squeeze himself into 7 pounds of human flesh and then show up in the last place anyone would have expected him to go. And with the last people anyone would have expected him to notice. The one who made galaxies was willing to become a baby, born in a dirty barn in the backwater village of Bethlehem to unwed peasants suffering under foreign occupation. The light of the world showed up in the darkest place possible to make the point that there's no one he doesn't see, no one he doesn't care about, no injustice or loss he doesn't feel personally, and no promise he doesn't keep. That's why the angels shouted about good news that will bring great joy, because even they didn't see that coming. But Simeon did. When others gave up hope, he kept waiting for God to keep his promise. He kept believing that God cared despite their distressing circumstances. And as soon as he saw that baby, although nothing else had been fixed yet, Simeon experienced peace in the midst of this world's pain, because by coming into their darkness, God confirmed that he cares and he proved that he keeps every promise. Simeon didn't yet know how that baby would do it. He could never have imagined he'd come to be murdered by the puny humans he'd created in order to make peace between us and himself by personally paying the penalties we deserved for all of the selfish, hateful things we'd done. Simeon could never have known that after forgiving us, Jesus would command us to forgive each other in the same way he forgave us, making peace possible between sinners just like us. Simeon didn't know any of that yet, but he knew that God was there and God cared. And that was enough to give him real peace while still waiting for the rest of God's promises to be fulfilled. So Simeon took him in his arms and praised God, saying, "Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. For my eyes have seen your salvation." Yeah, some of you are thinking, there's all that religious stuff. I mean, what does any of this have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. Because just like Simeon, we live in a broken world where sometimes it feels like we're in a battle, being attacked from every side. For too many people these days, war isn't just a metaphor. And as we scan the headlines or our social media feeds, sometimes it feels like evil is winning. This isn't the way the world is supposed to be. We know it in our bones because God wrote that into our bones. We know that we were created for a world that's better than this one. And when that baby Jesus grew up, he confirmed that a better world is coming. A day before dying for us on a cross, the one who came from the Father assured his frightened disciples, "Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. There's more than enough room in my Father's home. when everything's ready, I'll come get you so that you'll always be with me where I am. It's coming. But for now, like Simeon, we're waiting. He was waiting for the promised child to be born to a virgin in a little town of Bethlehem called Emmanuel, God with us. It seemed impossible to most people, but God kept that promise. We're waiting for the true justice, complete healing, and everlasting peace that Jesus promised to bring when he comes back again. It seems impossible to most people today, but we celebrate Christmas because it proves that God cares and always keeps his impossible-sounding promises. And this is the key to finding the peace the angels promised to those startled shepherds that first Christmas. Jesus explained that he gives us peace, but not as the world gives it. The world demands immediate relief because it assumes that peace can only happen when around me all is calm and all is bright. So the world tells us to protest and vote, not out of responsibility to love my neighbor, but out of anxiety because I can only find peace when the world is perfect. No more conflicts, no more worries, no more deadlines, diseases, darkness, or disappointments. But when that fails, the world recommends finding relief by taking a vacation or buying something, smoking something, or zoning out, whatever it takes to temporarily escape reality. But Jesus gives us peace in a different way than the world does. Instead of escaping the darkness, Jesus joins us right in the middle of it. Like most kids, my granddaughter went through a stage where she suddenly became afraid of the dark. See, she suggested keeping the lights on at night, but I knew that she wouldn't get any sleep that way. So instead, as I put her to bed each night, I sing a couple of hymns with her and then lay with her in the dark until she falls peacefully asleep. Because she's no longer scared of the darkness when she knows that I'm there. And that same dynamic is what allows me to honestly face the darkness in our world today. If you listen regularly to High Rock's daily devotions, then you've surely heard me remind you that the most common command in the entire Bible is not, don't lie, steal, cheat, or sleep with the wrong person. No, by far, the most frequently repeated command is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Now, lots of Christians know that, but fail at it. Because given all of the potential threats we see, fear seems like the most reasonable response. But the real reason they fail is that they don't know the most frequently repeated promise in the Bible that can make us fearless even in the darkness. I am with you. The shepherds huddled in the darkness. The angels declared, glory to the God in the highest heaven and peace on earth. Why peace? Because in that barn in Bethlehem, God came to us in the darkness. And if he's willing to show up there, then there's nowhere that God won't go to find you too. We don't have to wait until all the wars are over and all the injustice and suffering are ended and the darkness is entirely behind us. Those shepherds, after seeing the child, were filled with joy, even though they returned to the same fields with the same sheep in the same darkness. They weren't the same. Now they knew that God cared and that God was there with them, even in the darkness. Friends, we can be with God in the darkness while we wait together for the dawn that we know is coming. So how can we experience real peace like Simeon did, even while we're still waiting for the complete peace that's coming when Jesus returns? Let me give you 2 practical tips that come straight from the scriptures. Worry takes place in our amygdalas, the limbic, primal part of our brain, where we feel intensely but can't think logically. It's designed to help us react quickly to short-term threats. But most of us walk around with our amygdalas slightly agitated all the time, constantly stoked by every headline and threat of what might happen next. That's exhausting. and is one cause of the current epidemics of anxiety and depression. But long before neuroscience could explain why he's right, Paul gives us the perfect prescription. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he's done. Prayer requires putting into words what we're feeling in our limbic system. And that process moves it from our reactive amygdala into our more reflective prefrontal cortex, where we can carefully examine it, discuss it with God, discuss what's true and not, and what we should do in response. And thank him for all he's done, Paul adds, by remembering the ways that God has showed up in dark situations in the past. We recognize that maybe this darkness isn't so scary anymore. It's still dark, but I'm not afraid here because I'm not alone here. I never have been and never will be. Each morning as I pray the Lord's Prayer, I begin by praying, Our Father, the one who created and cares for me, our Father in heaven, which doesn't mean far away, up beyond space somewhere. It just means in the air, right? It means everywhere. Everywhere I'll go today, in every conversation, every decision, every disappointment, even in the darkness, Father, you're already there. Whatever I pray about after that isn't so scary anymore, which is why Paul continues, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he's done. Then you'll experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. This peace that exceeds my understanding, I like to call it the peace that makes no sense, because my circumstances haven't changed yet, but I'm changed. Because now I can see the God who shows up in even the worst circumstances, from a barn in Bethlehem to the darkness where shepherds protect sheep from predators, to whatever situation I'm in now and whatever other darkness there is in the world today. Today, our smartphones have made us more connected to the darkness of the world than ever, but less connected with Jesus, the light of the world. No wonder we're so anxious and depressed, and all of our supposed solutions only make the world's problems worse. If I try to fix the world's problems on my own, I'll only get more anxious and depressed because that task is too big for me. Peace comes when I believe that the creator of the cosmos is with me, and I can trust him to care for me and use me to care for others. Because Jesus calls us not simply to be peace lovers, but peace makers, showing up for others in darkness or pain, the way that Jesus showed up for us that first Christmas, so that they can experience a piece of God's peace too. God's peace may start with us, but it can't stay with us. The world's wars in Ukraine, Sudan, or the shouting match in somebody's home, they matter to God, because he still loves the world and wants to push his peace into every part of it. So yes, vote for people and protest for policies that will protect the people and address the evils around us. But do that from a place of peace rather than a place of rage. So every morning, before I do anything else, before I wake my kids or check my email or read the headlines, I pursue peace by turning all of my worries into prayers. And the challenge of the rest of the day is to keep my eyes on Jesus everywhere I go. Isaiah promises, you will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, whose thoughts are fixed on you. That means that I want to read the headlines with Jesus. I want to approach conflict with Jesus. I want to make financial choices and family choices and career choices and political choices with Jesus. And when life suddenly gets dark, as it does sometimes, as it did at Brown and Bondi Beach last week, I want to search for Jesus even there. Because just like at Christmas, Jesus often comes closest to us in the darkness. One day, God guarantees. There will be no more darkness or death, no more fighting or fear or tears. One day, the government will rest on Jesus' shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government and its peace will never end. One day. And I know that he'll keep that promise to come again for us, because he kept the impossible-sounding promise to come that first Christmas. Thanks be to God.